What is going on, RFL fans? Coach Chris Dunn here of the Sacramento Miners, back at it for another episode of Miners Live. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't checked out any of the previous episodes, be sure to go back and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Sacramento Miners RFL. Also on Twitter, Miners at Miners RFL, and the same with Instagram at Miners RFL. All the latest breaking news will be on Twitter, will be on Instagram, and we're even going to be throwing out breaking news stories on the YouTube channel live throughout the season. During the off season, any transactions, trades, things like that, we'll be throwing those up on the YouTube channel as well. So really excited with all the content that's going to be coming out. Excited to have producer Rohan, back at it for another episode today. And we're really going to break down a lot of the PAR index a little bit more in detail today. I know that's something that you've probably seen a little bit over the last week and a half, kind of wondering a little bit what exactly that is. I'll go into more on the PAR index and what it means, how you should look at those grades, how you should look at the numbers, what your takeaways should be from it. But before we do anything, just kind of some quick news around the league, around the RFL. There's a lot of great stuff going on right now from the college series in terms of top 10 breakdowns. So if you haven't had a chance, be sure to go over to the Discord, check out the community channels, the news channels. You'll get a good glimpse what Mitch and Coach Baker have been doing with the top 10 rankings for the incoming college series class. Recently, they put up their top 10 safeties, top 10 linebackers, top 10 defensive linemen. So be sure to go and check that out. Maybe you didn't make that top 10 list and you've now got a chip on your shoulder. All the more reason to pay attention. So that should be some good stuff. And as they're wrapping that up, I believe they just finished up their last top 10. So we're getting much closer to the college series. Smitty had come out and said it's probably looking like possibly mid-September for the college series to start. So we're not that far away. We are, I would say, less than a month away from the college series, probably about 3.5 weeks, maybe, if there is a little bit of a delay. So college series right around the corner. Other breaking news out of the RFL is in Austin, Texas, where we recently found out that the Armadillos will be staying in Austin. The Austin Armadillos will remain a team in the RFL, and the Desperados will be relocating. So for those of you that have seen over the last couple of weeks, it has become clear that there will be another round of relocation for the RFL. It may not happen this season. It depends on whether or not there's significant patches and significant updates to Madden before January and the RFL season actually starts. But even if that doesn't happen, then we're probably looking at Madden 23. So not this coming RFL season, but the following RFL season, a lot of relocation. So going into last season, the Mexico City Conquistadors were forced to relocate because they were no longer in the game. If you notice, in Madden 21, there was no more Conquistadors option for Mexico City. So they had to be relocated. That was the team that I took over. So we relocated to Sacramento and became the Sacramento Miners. The other team that was relocated last season was the San Antonio Marshals, where same thing, the Marshals were no longer an option in San Antonio. So that had to be switched. That team relocated to Orlando and has now become the Orlando Wizards. So the Sacramento Miners and the Orlando Wizards used to be the Mexico City Conquistadors and the San Antonio Marshals. Now, the big push and the big movement moving forward in the RFL is that there will only be one RFL team per city. You will not have multiple duplicates, basically just like it allows you to do in the Madden file, and that's all it allows you to do. So that's really exciting. We're going to get some new cities, hopefully, some new cities, new teams, new mascots within the next couple of years. It's going to be really exciting. So the Austin Armadillos won the fan vote simply because the city of Austin, both teams have pretty good history in the RFL. So it went to a fan vote on which team would stay and which team would go. The Austin Armadillos won the fan vote, so they will stay. The Desperados will have to relocate. So if you're the Desperados and you want to keep your name, the Desperados, where might you want to move to? I figure, maybe a city like Phoenix, the Phoenix Desperados, or my personal favorite. I know Rohan, the producer, and I talked about this a little bit last week, but Vegas. I think Vegas is a great city for the RFL. I know that it does have an actual NFL team. And I know that, Smitty really wants to try and not have as many crossover cities from the NFL to the RFL. But I think Vegas is a really good one. It's a really new city in the NFL. So, I think it's a good one to carry over. And I think the Las Vegas Desperados would be really good. Also, if you want to look at something like, here's a thought for you. Not even a city per se. What about a region, right? What about the Death Valley Desperados? Like, how cool would that be? Forget about an actual city. Let's just call them the Death Valley Desperados. I mean, that's probably, I believe right now that would be the first region to have their own franchise in the RFL. If you look at all the teams in the RFL, they are actual cities. It's not uncommon to see things like that. Golden State, they got their own team. New England has a sports team. So I think Death Valley would be really cool. That would be a good one. And with the name Desperados, I think it kind of just goes really well. Death Valley Desperados. I think I'm gonna advocate for the Death Valley Desperados. Let me know what you think about Death Valley. Can I get hashtag Death Valley Desperados? And we'll see if we can get that over to Smitty and maybe we can make that work. If you were paying attention to the Twitter, our Twitter page over the last week, you probably saw the trivia question from Thursday. So for those of you that don't know, Miners Live airs every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And every Thursday, we throw out our little fun off-season game called Trivia Thursday, where I throw out a question based on the RFL, based on the Miners, and test your knowledge. And every Monday, we answer those questions. So last week, for Trivia Thursday, we threw out a question on Instagram, and we threw the same question out on Twitter, right? So the question that we posed was, which team drafted Thomas Brown, right? So Thomas Brown, who was a right tackle that I acquired last season from one of these four teams. I'm not going to give away the answer. I acquired Thomas Brown from one of these four teams in a trade last season. He was selected third overall in 2019, and the team that selected him third overall was which team? The correct answer, for those of you that got this right, shout out to you. The correct answer was A, the London Black Knights. The London Black Knights selected Thomas Brown with the third overall pick in the 2019 RFL Draft. I was then able to acquire Thomas Brown in a midseason trade. We traded away DeAndre Russell, who was our number one corner at the time. He was our number one corner, but he was entering free agency at the end of the season. I didn't really feel comfortable giving the amount of money that he wanted. And so I was probably going to let him walk in free agency. Rather than let him walk, I threw out some trade offers, tried to see what the market was like. He was, I believe, an 83 or an 84 overall corner. So, certainly plenty of interest around the league. I was able to acquire another corner, a younger corner in Jason DePape. So for those of you that are Miners fans and saw many of the Miners games throughout the second half of last season, you saw significant contributions from Jason DePape. Jason DePape was acquired from the London Black Knights with Thomas Brown for DeAndre Russell. So I look back on that trade, and I'm really excited about the contributions of Jason DePape from last season. You saw him in the intro, which for those of you that had not seen that intro, I'm super excited. And shout out to C. Beazle for his help in making that intro come to life. We sat down for a while, and I kind of talked about what I wanted in a show intro, and we were able to come up with some ideas, and that's what we settled on. And I love it. I think it's fantastic. It's a great addition to the show. So again, special thanks and shout out to C. Beazle for that. But I look back on that trade, and I'm really excited about not just the contributions that Jason DePape provided in the second half, but also that Thomas Brown got to join the team. He didn't start. I want to say maybe I plugged him in one game towards the end of the season that didn't mean anything. I want to say maybe week 17, we had the division locked up. I think we had the number 2 seed locked up. I believe I started Thomas Brown at right tackle just to give him some playing time. Then in the offseason, we had some guys, we had some moves that we had to make on the offensive line. And so Thomas Brown will actually be sliding over to left tackle heading into this season. Now, I'm really excited about Thomas Brown at left tackle because for those of you that saw last week, when I launched this PAR index, right? So I teased it a little bit at the beginning of the show, PAR index. What the heck is the PAR index? So the PAR index is the position attribute adjusted rating, or position adjusted attribute rating. So the left tackles, when I broke down the left tackle position for the ARC, the top 10 left tackles in the ARC, according to the PAR index, Thomas Brown, again, he hasn't actually started at left tackle. I'm going to be playing him at left tackle this season. Thomas Brown slides over in at left tackle, and he comes into the PAR index at an 82.04. Now, the nice thing about that, and what I really like about it, and part of the reason why I slid him over to left tackle, is because his overall is not that high. His overall is significantly lower. If you look at the overall grade for Thomas Brown, his overall is a 75. So for him to score 82 on the PAR index, that meant a lot for me in terms of the attributes that I deem to be important for that position. So for those of you that aren't aware, the key attributes, certainly for offensive line, and we're going to talk a lot about offensive line on today's show. The key attributes for offensive line are pass block finesse, pass block power, run block finesse, run block power, pass block, run block, strength, and impact block. Those are the ones that I weighted for the PAR index. Some people might like lead block. I particularly don't. I really don't think lead block is all that important. I mean, if you've got a really fast offensive lineman, that doesn't really happen, and he's getting downfield and he's providing like some lead block, I don't know. I just don't see it. So I weighted those 8 attributes, and each attribute got a different percentage value, a different weight based on which actual attribute I thought was most important. So that's what this PAR index does, is it takes all of the attributes of these players and it breaks them down to which ones are most important. So for example, the left tackle position, you want to look at the raw data, or like, where did these numbers come from? This is what the left tackle position looked like when calculating the PAR index. It's a lot of numbers. You're probably going to be blown away by a lot of this. Yes, this is something that I did completely on my own. So how do you read it? How do you read it, right? Like, what is all this? Basically, these are the projected starting left tackles for every single team in the ARC. And then you will see their attributes based on, like I said, those 8 attributes that went into the PAR index. It also shows you their archetype, their actual Madden overall, and then their height, weight, age, and then even also what their dev trait is. So you'll notice here, Travis Blaylock of the Aviators, Riley Hayden of the Sentinels, they have star dev. Zach Kowalski of the Cougars, superstar dev. And then the only two guys in the ARC, as a matter of fact, the only two offensive linemen to have superstar X Factor development, Celtic Tigers Glenn Devine and San Diego Red Dragons DeMarcus DeGreat. Now, you'll also notice that those guys are a little bit older than several of the other guys here. So this is what the data looks like for the PAR index. Every position is going to be a little bit different. Pass block finesse isn't going to be weighted the same if you're a left tackle as it is for a right guard, for example. So a lot of offensive line talk on the show today. We saw the left tackles, the top 10 for the left tackles. Now I'm just going to get right into it. I do have the top 10 ARC by right tackle, left guard, and right guard that I'm going to show all of you on the show tonight. So just to get right into it, you saw the top 10 left tackles in the ARC. We're going to go right into the top 10 right tackles in the ARC. So coming in at number 1, Hanson Bibla of the Toronto Huskies with an 83.87 overall. That's really good. I do like Bibla. I think he's got a lot. I think he's actually got a lot of progression and development still to come. So I think that's a name that you could hear in the RFL for several years to come. I think that's a potential Pro Bowl offensive lineman for the ARC. And then just looking through the rest of them here, again, you're looking at this and maybe you're wondering, where's my guy? Again, this is only the top 10. There were projected from every single team. So I'll throw this up just so you can see kind of where some of the data is for the right tackle position. You look at a guy like Hanson Bibla, right? 83.87 on the PAR index. But if you look at the raw data and you find Hanson Bibla of the Huskies about halfway down there, 27 years old, 6'5", 311 pounds. He's an 82 overall. So the PAR index does grade him up a little bit more than his overall, which one thing I will tell you about the PAR index is that a lot of times when you are above 80, certainly when you get above 85, your PAR index score is going to be harder to go up higher than your overall grade. And a lot of times you're going to notice your PAR index a lot more in line with your overall grade, or in some cases it's going to fall below your overall grade. And that's because there's some of these attributes like strength and impact block just aren't weighted as high as some of these other ones. And so if you've got guys with really high impact block, for example, if you've got a guy like, if we go back to the left tackles and you look at a guy like DeMarcus DeGreat, right? He's got 95 strength and 91 impact block. That is bringing his 97 overall grade to 97. That's bringing it up to where it is. And if you notice, his PAR index score drops down to a 95. That's not abnormal. You'll notice that with a lot of guys. A lot of guys that have really high overall grades don't expect their PAR index to be that same level. Now, then again, you look at a guy like Glenn Devine, and that's where I really look at a guy and say, okay, that's a guy that fits exactly what I want for this position. When I've got the overall already at an 88, but he's an 89 on the PAR index, that's the kind of guy that you want to be looking for. So as you're looking at these, as these are being posted up and as you're kind of, looking and breaking them down, if you want more information on this, I can certainly help you guys out and go over it more in detail. But really just wanted to give you an idea of what the top 10 looks like. So here's the top 10 at right tackle. Here's the top 10 at left guard. So excited here for me personally to see Brady Brayton slide in there, 4th overall in the ARC with an 83.15 on the PAR index. Just only behind Preston Pemberton of the Chicago Cougars, Aiden Mahill of the San Antonio Dreadnoughts, and Connor Bussing of the Salt Lake City Pioneers. So certainly some big names at the top there. Some young guys at the top there, as we'll get into a little bit older, the average ages when you look at the offensive line position versus some of these guys that are up there now. We had a question out. I'm going to address this. I know it popped up a little bit earlier and I didn't get a chance to talk about it at first, but question out there from Anthony Fry. Do you think offensive line is better to improve through the draft or through free agency? So great question. Quite honestly, I think this is a bit of a no-brainer, only since if you're able to get offensive line in the draft, you're probably getting user submitted offensive line. And because you're getting user submitted offensive line, that player is going to have the ability to grow and develop and progress his player significantly faster than any other generic would. So if you have a user submitted offensive lineman, yes, the user submitted offensive lineman would be the best way to go. And a great example of that, thanks for the question, Anthony. A great example of that would be if you go back and look at, I believe it was right guard. Was it right guard? No, it was left guard. So here's the top 10 right guards. If we go back and look at the top 10 left guards, you see number 5 right there, Connor Hawk. So Connor Hawk is a rookie. He was a rookie first-round draft pick out of Miami, and Connor Hawk is already in the top 5 on the PAR index. He's got an 81.74 on the PAR index, and if you look at his actual overall grade, Connor Hawk comes in at a 78. So he's a 78 overall as a rookie. We don't know. Actually, we do know the dev. I believe the dev's hidden in the file, but I believe it was superstar dev for Connor Hawk. So he's a 78 overall. He's only 20 years old, and he's likely got superstar dev. So again, just to further, drive home the point and the answer to Anthony's question, yeah, I want to go after offensive linemen in the draft. Maybe there's some guys in free agency. Maybe you can get a guy like so here's an example. Last season we had Travis Waddell on our team. I believe he was the right tackle. Travis Waddell, who's now on the Bulldogs. So maybe they moved him to left guard. Nope, not left guard. So maybe it's right guard. Let's check and see if it was right guard. Yeah, right guard. So the London Bulldogs acquired Travis Waddell in free agency. He was on our team last year. He's a 76 overall. That's okay. That's nothing special. But again, to prove the point, you can get a 78 overall with superstar dev in the first round at offensive line. And Travis Waddell was arguably one of the best available offensive linemen in free agency. Now, there's still some guys that are going to be available coming up, but that's pretty much one of the best guys out there. So again, guys, the PAR index, I'm going to go through and do it for every position in the RFL, but I just think it's a great way for you to kind of see based on the attributes that are important for the position. Some attributes just aren't that important, but they are going to bring up your overall and they're going to affect your overall. And that doesn't really matter. I don't really care about that. I want a left tackle to have good pass block finesse. I want my right guard and my left guard to have good run block power and pass block power because they've got defensive tackles who are going to be pretty powerful coming across the line at them. So that's why I look at power a bit more for the guards. So again, the PAR index, check it out. If you like it, let me know. If you think it's stupid, then fine, let me know. One thing I did find interesting when going through this is looking at some of the teams that are really good on the offensive line. So I looked at all of the teams in the ARC and I tried to come up with which teams have a player at each position. Centers are not included. I've not gone through and done center yet, but the two tackle positions and the two guard positions. Are there any teams out there that have a player to be 80 or above on the PAR index in each of those positions? And there are several teams that actually do. The Dublin Celtic Tigers, the Chicago Cougars, the San Antonio Dreadnoughts, the Toronto Huskies, the San Diego Red Dragons, the Portland Riverhogs, and the Houston Voyagers all have 80 or above at each of those starting positions on the PAR index. So where did we miss out on that list? We did not make it. Darian Paul, who's a newly acquired player from this past offseason, he did not reach the 80 grade. Other than that, the other three starting offensive linemen for the Miners are above 80 on the PAR index. So I look at those teams right there as having really good offensive line. One team in particular that I really like is the Chicago Cougars. When you look at the Chicago Cougars at left tackle, Zach Kowalski, 88.25 on the PAR index. He's third. At right tackle, D'Angelo Farrell, 83.72, second overall. So at the tackle position alone, the Chicago Cougars have number 2 and number 3 on the PAR index. Then you go to left guard, and the Chicago Cougars are number 1 in Preston Pemberton at 84.41. And then finally at right guard, the Chicago Cougars fall all the way down to number 8. Oh my God. And Sean Hayden in at 81.49. So on the PAR index, the Chicago Cougars have number 1. They have a number 1, a number 2, and a number 3 at their position. So certainly an offensive line that I am going to be looking at to produce very well throughout the RFL season. So again, the PAR index out there, check it out. Another thing that I did while I was looking at this is find the overall ages. I noticed that the left tackles, the average age at left tackle, 27 years old. At right tackle, just over 27 years old. Left guard, about 26 and a half years old. And then right guard, the average age at right guard is almost 29 years old. So again, if you can get some young offensive line help, these offensive linemen that just got drafted this past draft, those kids are going to be good in the league. All of those user submitted offensive linemen are going to be good. And when the average age is already about 27, 28, 29 in some cases right now, those guys are going to be phasing out and they're going to be regressing pretty soon. So we're going to see a lot of these rookies some of them making immediate impacts. And if not immediate, they're going to be everyday starters by their second and certainly third year in the league. So the offensive line, I know it's not the sexiest position. I know it doesn't get talked about a lot, but certainly something that we're going to be looking forward to throughout this upcoming RFL season. Certainly something I am really going to be looking forward to when it comes to, I guess, things to look out for in the upcoming RFL season. So we've got a couple other things that I wanted to talk about, but before we go any further, I do have another guest coming on the show. For those of you that had caught the first episode or the second episode of Miners Live, you saw that on episode 1, we had tight end Anthony Fry, recently drafted in the RFL draft. He was the 7th selection in the second round. He came on the show. Last week, we had second round pick Paavo Frederick on the show. He was the 29th selection in the second round. Paavo Frederick came on the show. And now I'm super excited to have our first round selection from this past year's draft, the 17th overall pick in the RFL draft, TJ Metcalf out of Miami. TJ, what's going on, buddy?
Not much. How about you?
I'm good. I'm really excited. Glad to have you on the show. I'm glad that you were able to take some time and come on. I know we talked about getting you on, and so really happy to have you on. Excited to have you on. Just, I guess, tell me first, what are your thoughts about the draft and how things played out?
Really, I didn't like the fact that I fell that low, but I'm happy to be a Miner.
What did you? So I guess I would expect players to be a little bit disappointed with their draft position, unless of course you were drafted in the top 5. Then you don't really have much to complain about. But I kind of like that competitive fire, that little bit of a chip on your shoulder. I think it's good, and I think it can do a lot to further develop you throughout your career, to have that chip on your shoulder as you enter the league. But I guess what I would ask you is, you went 17th overall. I was thrilled to get you. I know we've had this conversation a little bit offline. I did not expect you to be there at 17 overall. I had the 24th pick in the draft, and I had you on my board. I was not anticipating getting you at 24. I did everything I could to try to make some trades. I was able to get up to 17. I still didn't think that I was going to be able to get you at 17 because I know I had you as the number one defensive end coming out of college. I think most other GMs in the league probably had you as the number one defensive end, or certainly the number two defensive end. We saw a little bit of a slide, and we didn't see any defensive ends go in the top 10, top 15. You were the first defensive end taken at 17. Where did you think that you were going to go? And did you have a team at all in mind when you looked at the draft order that you thought might pick you?
Honestly, I was thinking that I would end up going to the River Hogs.
Okay.
But I really didn't have a team. I was just hoping for a really good team that already had a start on winning some games, and I'm glad I ended up here.
So the River Hogs had the 8th overall pick. So which I guess that's about in line where I would have projected you to go on the early end. I think the guys in the top 4, top 5 were probably set in stone. But I had you pegged probably to go somewhere in that 7 to 15 range. I did not anticipate you being there at 17. I had multiple conversations with Smitty about moving into the top 10 with some of the teams that do not have a head coach. Nothing worked out. I had long conversations with the Bulldogs at number 11 about acquiring number 11. Nothing panned out. I had several conversations with Mitch at 13. Nothing panned out. I get lucky. You're still available at 17. You're coming to Sacramento. What is it that you are most looking forward to about entering the RFL?
Just showing what I can do and how I can make this team better.
What do you think is your biggest strength? I guess to kind of take it a step further there from what you just said, what can you do? What is your strength?
Honestly, I feel like I don't really have that many weaknesses. Like, my best attribute would probably be power rushing.
Yep.
I feel like I'm the best when it comes to getting sacks out of this rookie class.
Yep. Power rushing is certainly, I believe power rushing did actually grade out as your highest attribute. You come in as a 74 overall star dev. So really excited to see the development and the growth. I'm certainly going to be having some offline conversations with you and kind of get your idea on what you would like to do and how we can develop to best fit, the scheme and what it is that we're looking to do, whether that be in a 3-4 or even sometimes in a 4-3. So super excited for the future and what that is going to look like for you. But to go back a step here, forget about the RFL for a second. Let's go back to college. Let's go back to Miami. Let's go back to the U. All of the expectations, all of the hype surrounding the Miami Hurricanes heading into the college series last year. Multiple players, very active, very talkative, very chatty, not afraid to talk a little trash. Did you feel there was any additional pressure on you given the amount of talent at Miami and the hype or expectations surrounding the school?
No, not really. I felt as though everybody was going to do their part, and in the end, we would dominate.
Well, in the end, everyone did their part. I don't know that I would say everyone dominated. I know we saw Miami get out to a little bit of a struggle early on. They did turn things around a little bit as of late. But to your point, every individual players did have really good seasons. So while the overall success and the overall no, you didn't go to the national championship. You didn't win the national championship. But in terms of individual player success, there certainly was certainly was a lot of overall individual success. You look at a guy like Lito Loso, you look at a guy like Chris Polk, both
Mm,
players, both players that went early in the first round. Yourself, Connor Hawk, right? We talked about him. The Riverhogs, you thought the Riverhogs were going to take you. They took your teammate out of Miami, Connor Hawk, instead. Um, Looking back at the college series and your player specifically, you had to create your player going into the college series. And so you created this defensive end and you had to set aside certain attributes for your player. Did you give any, what was the thought process, I guess, for you as you were creating this player,
Take up off the floor, put it somewhere so one
the defensive end at Miami?
really, I just wanted to create the best player possible.
Was there any particular, attribute or skill that you felt was what you needed to do in order to create the best player possible?
Getting to the quarterback.
All right, so getting to the quarterback. So you had 99 strength, finesse move 90, power move 90, block shed 90, right? So I look at that and I say, great. I've got block shed, power move, and finesse move all at 90. For my money, those three attributes are very key to getting to the quarterback. You need to be able to shed blocks. You got to have a power move. And if you don't have a power move, a finesse move. So, maybe one of those could have been an 85. If you wanted to be more power move, you could have put finesse move out an 85. And then maybe you could have jumped up play recognition or speed to a 90. Certainly other ways that you could have gone, but power move is going to be your bread and butter, I believe, in the RFL. I'm excited to see what that's going to look like. We did lose our starting right end in a trade right before the draft. So there's going to be opportunity for you to come in right away and play as a rookie. We did go and draft Xavier Beckford III. Another rookie out of LSU, but really it's going to be you two, and one of you is going to take that starting spot. So, as the first defensive end selected in the draft, knowing that you're in a position where you could be starting right away on day one as a rookie, do you have any added pressure in the RFL? Since you were the first defensive end taken?
Yeah, for sure.
And what do you plan on doing? What are some of the things that you're going to do to try to help you get through that and thrive?
Grind. Put in the work needed.
Do you have any goals or expectations that you've set for yourself at this point?
Like, I'm optimistic I'll get at least 8.5 sacks this year. That's my goal at the end of it.
Ooh, as a rookie? As a rookie, you heard it. As a rookie here, kids. As a rookie in the RFL, TJ Metcalf says 8.5 sacks. Can we get a RFL bet on the over/under number of sacks for TJ Metcalf as a rookie? 8.5 sacks will be very impressive. I will certainly be thrilled with 8.5 sacks. I believe Dominic Brown was a rookie defensive tackle for us last season, and I believe he had 9.5 sacks. So I certainly think 8.5 sacks is doable. But then again, you look at other highly regarded defensive ends that have come into the league, right? Look at a guy like Drew Brewer of the Bulldogs, very highly regarded out of college. Entered the RFL, and I think he had 1 sack on the entire season, and he didn't get that until I want to say like week 15 or 16. So certainly there can be some growing pains. I love the optimism. I'm going to do everything I can to help you out and put you in a position to succeed. 8.5 sacks. I'd love to see you hit the over on 8.5. That would be fantastic. Any final thoughts? Anything else that you want to add before I get you out of here, TJ?
I'm just grateful that y'all took me.
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm excited to have you in Sacramento, excited to have you as part of the Gold Rush. Was not anticipating you being there at 17, so Really excited for this upcoming season. TJ, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for the time. If there's anything I can do, feel free to reach out offline. But we'll talk soon. And thanks again for coming on Miners Live tonight.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. TJ Metcalf, first round selection, 17th overall out of the University of Miami. Guys, you heard him. He's projecting 8.5 sacks for himself as a rookie. That's high praise, right? Like 8.5 sacks from the defensive end position is probably putting him in the top, certainly in the top 10 in the ARC for defensive linemen. So certainly for defensive ends. If TJ Metcalf can come in as a rookie and drop the quarterback 8.5 times, let's just call it 9 times, that's going to put him in position to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. That's going to put him in position to possibly make the Pro Bowl as a rookie. So really excited. Absolutely love the optimism. Love the optimism from TJ Metcalf. I see Coach Roland Woods out there in the chat. I see you, Roland. How you doing, buddy? I hope Coach Roland had a chance to check out the PAR rankings earlier. Actually, he won't get a chance to really see the PAR index because the Brooklyn Bulls are in the NRC. So until I can get access to all of the NRC attributes, I won't be able to break down the NRC. Still working on doing that, but for now, the ARC will get all of the PAR index. So we will do. So you saw the top 10 offensive linemen, left tackle, right guard, and left guard. You saw the top 10. That is just for the ARC. And then down the road in the future, hoping to get the NRC, access to the NRC files so we can do the top 10 for the NRC as well. So before we get to 4 down territory, because we're not far away. I know a lot of you probably excited for 4 down territory, where we bring in Rohan the producer the Rohan. Rohan the producer, we bring him in for 4 down territory and just kind of quick fire four hot topics from him. And before we do that, I wanted to go back to the offensive line a little bit and give you guys some names to look forward to, or names to look at this coming RFL season as some potential breakout candidates, right? So at left tackle, I want to go back and pull up the left tackles here. Some names at the left tackle position, not just the top 10, but I want to show you the actual data, the raw data. So I got 3 names on here that I think could potentially break out or really improve this season in the ARC. Thomas Brown, certainly with us, but also Theodore Rollins of the Austin Armadillos. He's 24 overall. His 24 years of age, I'm sorry. His overall is a 74, but his PAR index jumps all the way up to an 80.51. A lot of that, again, with left tackles, your pass block finesse is going to be really important. So yeah, he's only a 74 overall, but his pass block finesse was an 85. So that really helped out his PAR index. Impact block 79, that's bringing down his overall grade a little bit. At least from these other attributes. It's not bringing it down from the 74, obviously, but his impact block isn't weighted that heavily on the PAR index here. So again, you see a PAR score of 80.51 from Theodore Rollins, 24 years of age. He's going to be the starter in Austin. I think he's a guy that could really move up when we start looking at these rankings this time next year. And then another name that I really like, and he's got star dev, so I suppose this shouldn't come as a surprise, but that's Riley Hayden. Riley Hayden's 25 overall, 25 years of age, 85 overall. So the overall's there. I really do think that Riley Hayden could take that next step. When you look at the top 10, Riley Hayden came in at number 8 right there for the Orlando Sentinels with an 83.89. I really do firmly believe that when I do these rankings next year, Riley Hayden could be in the top 3. He might even be in the top 2 depending on what we see from Glenn Devine and DeMarcus DeGray, and if there's any regression there. Those two guys are going to be really tough to pass. Those are really high par index scores. And again, those are two guys who have superstar X factor. So it's going to be tough to pass those guys. A couple guys at right tackle that I really like. You look at a name like Joey Olivia of the Salt Lake City Pioneers. Now you'll notice two Pioneers on here. The Pioneers have a couple different ways they could go. So I wanted to break down both of these guys. They both have 71 overall. Ross Bond has the higher par score, but Joey Olivia is younger. And so I'm interested to see what he can do. The par index score did come up from his overall 71, par index 75, just about 75 and a half. He is a power archetype. And when I look at the right tackle position, I like a little bit more power at my right tackle than I do my left tackle. I still want my right tackle to have some finesse, but I do like a little bit more power, and I'm okay with a little bit more power there. So Olivier's a name that I'm looking at. Also, Walker Golston of the Bulls, 25 years old, 79 overall, the par index up over 82. He's an agile right tackle, which is kind of what I like personally for what I like to do. Absolutely love the 86 pass block finesse for my right tackle. So that's where you see this par index really was raised from his overall, is that 86 pass block finesse. In fact, there's only 3 players at the position in the ARC that have a higher overall pass block finesse. So Walker Golston, certainly a name that I'm going to be looking at. And then just real quick, because I do want to get into 4-down territory with Rohan. Real quick, a couple names, other names. Right guard, I'm looking at guys like Tyrone Fulani. Tyrone Fulani is not a name, or you do Tyrone Fulani in at number 6 here on the top 10. That's a name that I think could jump up a little bit. Norman Sinclair, another Sacramento minor. I think he could potentially move up a little bit. And then a name that's not on the list here for right guard is Will Fromm, another Salt Lake City Pioneer, 27 years old. You saw basically a 7.5 point jump from his overall grade to his par index score. And what I like most about Will Fromm is all 3 of his archetypes are the same. So power, pass block, and agile are all the same overall for him. So really could go any direction. And with that versatility, could probably play anywhere on the offensive line. So certainly a guy that I think is going to get plenty of playing time. So Will Fromm, a name that I certainly like there for the Salt Lake City Pioneers. All right, so we got some breakout candidates for next season. We went over the par index, left tackles, left guards, right guards. We're not going to go over the centers. I'll have the graphic for the centers up later on this week. Probably tomorrow I will have the top 10 centers in the ARC. I see Coach Roland Woods in the chat. Do the sizes of the boxes have any correlation to the weight, the attribute, that's in grading, the sizes? Do the sizes of the boxes have any correlation to the weight? No. If you're asking about the width, does the width of the box have anything to do with the weight? No. It's just pass block finesse is a longer word than has more characters than PB and RB. So that's why PB and RB are a narrower column. If that's what you're asking me, Coach, I'm not quite sure if I was reading the question correctly, but no, the size of the boxes doesn't have anything to do with them. Those are just, and they're not even in that particular order. That being said, I will say, spoiler alert, I will tell you that left to right, that is the order of importance for the left tackle position. So if you look at the left tackle position, the pass block finesse was the highest weighted attribute, then pass block power, then run block power, then run block finesse, then run block power. That was in order, but every other position is different. So, pass block finesse could be 15% of your overall. Pass block power could be 13% of your score. It doesn't have anything to do with the size of the actual boxes there. So, but great question. Because that could be something that I threw in without even trying to give it away. I could have totally given it away by just going off the size of the boxes. So a lot of offensive line talk today. Again, I apologize if you're not an offensive line fan, but this is the offseason, and we have to give everybody the opportunity. We have to break down everyone. The RFL has a lot of great players, and the skill positions, the wide receivers, the running backs, those guys get talked about a lot. The offensive linemen don't get talked about as much. So really wanted to take a lot of time and go over the offensive linemen. After the show, I'm going to actually throw out a couple offensive linemen. I didn't talk about this during the show, but I will throw it up on Twitter after the show. So pay attention to the Miners Twitter feed at Miners RFL after the show. And I'm going to give you a list of 5 offensive linemen that I think might struggle this season, or that I think could see a little bit of regression in terms of at least their PAR index score from this year to next year. So look for those. There you go, Coach Woods. O-line is most important. It really is the most important. For me, a solid running game is most important, but you can't have a solid running game without a good offensive line. So really excited that we do have some user-submitted offensive linemen in the league this year. Wish we had more. I think Coach Woods would agree with me that I wish we had more offensive linemen that were user-submitted in the draft this year. But for the college series, we've got a lot of them. So really excited to see this coming college series. And if you noticed, if you follow the Sacramento Miners, you notice that we didn't draft any offensive linemen this season. I strategically didn't draft any offensive linemen this year because there wasn't that many. And I knew that there was going to be a lot more next year. So I didn't want to waste a first-round pick on an offensive lineman, because that's what it was going to take to get one of these really good offensive linemen. So next season, you're really going to see an influx of offensive line, and probably several rookies will be on this PAR index in terms of the top 10 when we do this next year, I guess, when we do this. So, all right. Lots of offensive line talk. Let's go and shy away from offensive line, away from the entire ARC, and let's go a little bit more Miners. Let's bring in Rohan, the producer, for 4 Down Territory. And Rohan, welcome to the show, good buddy. You're gonna have to take yourself off of mute.
Oops, my bad. All right, there you go.
What do you have for me in 4 Down Territory? What do we have for first down here tonight?
All right, first down. So it's just plain simple. Are these Miners contenders in the ARC? If anything, they've gotten better this offseason. The key loss probably this offseason was Victor Middleton, but that's nothing compared to how much they got and gained in this draft. They did really well in this draft. So does this make them straight up contenders in the ARC? And are they Relo bowl bound?
So yeah, we're absolutely contenders in the ARC. I mean, look, we finished the year 12-4 last year, and we won the South Division. Not only that, but we had the number 2 seed in the conference. So, we were contenders last year, right? And so you brought up a good point. I believe we were contenders last year, and so certainly I believe we are contenders this year, because despite what you mentioned, despite the loss of Victor Middleton, yes, that is a loss. He did have some fantastic plays for us during the season. The loss of Lincoln Matthews. We just had, for those of you that were listening earlier, we had TJ Metcalf on the show. Lincoln Matthews was our starting right end last season. He's no longer with the team. He's gone. Also, Luke Stokes. He was our starting right outside linebacker. He is gone. So those guys are gone. And yeah, Luke Stokes was an 84 overall. I believe Lincoln Matthews was an 81 overall. I'm not replacing them with an 84 overall or an 81 overall, but I am replacing those guys with younger guys, user-submitted guys who are going to be able to build up their develop and progress much quicker. So I look at a guy like TJ Metcalf, and although he's only a 74 overall, I think he fits this scheme better than Lincoln Matthews did. I think he's going to be more productive for this team than Lincoln Matthews was. And then I look at outside linebacker, and Mason Rogers was acquired in free agency as a middle linebacker. I really am leaning towards moving him to outside linebacker to let Kenny Forrester sit side by side with AJ Pestock. And Mason Rogers has 89 speed as an outside linebacker. So for what I'm doing in a 3-4, I like that 89 speed. If he's pressuring the quarterback off the edge in a 3-4, I like his ability to maybe get to the quarterback with that speed. I also like the speed in terms of coverage. So, I really do think that this team got better. No, the overall might not be there, but I think the team is better now than it was before. So to answer your question, yes, absolutely. I think this team is a contender. And yes, I think we can go to the Relo Bowl. Look, it took overtime to lose to the London Black Knights in round 1. And had we beat the Black Knights, who knows? We could have eventually gone to the Relo Bowl, and we didn't. So yes, absolute contenders. I do think we have a chance to go to the Relo Bowl. That said, I think there's 4 or 5 teams in the ARC that could go to the Relo Bowl this year. So it's certainly up for grabs. Second down, what do you got?
All right, second down. So you spoke a lot about, getting some linebackers in free agency, and this draft was focused a little more on defense. You did get Pablo Frederick and Jakari Torres on the offensive end, but you also got some key pieces on defense that you're going to use. So now with all the stocking up in the offseason, do the Miners have the best linebacker core in the league?
So I will be honest, I haven't had a chance to really break down the entire league in terms of linebacker. I do think that we have one of the best linebacker cores in the ARC, if not the best linebacking core in the ARC. When you look at Anton Burley, for my money, he's the best, if not certainly top 3 at the outside linebacker position in the ARC, if not in the entire RFL. AJ Pestock is really good. I did notice that there's a lot of really talented middle linebackers in the RFL. So, do I think AJ Pestock is the best middle linebacker in the ARC? No, I don't. Do I think he's potentially a top 5 middle linebacker in the ARC? Yeah, I do. Could he be a Pro Bowl middle linebacker? Yes. So I think the combination of Pestock and Burley really carry this line. But again, I do really like Mason Rogers. Having an outside linebacker with 89 speed, who, his overall comes in at 75. He's not super old. I believe he's 27 years old. So, I think his contributions shouldn't be understated for this team. I'm not going to say we have the best linebacking core in the league in terms of the entire RFL. Mm-hmm. I will say I think we're pretty close in the ARC. What do you think? Have you had a chance to look at? Is there a team out there that you think has a better linebacking core than the Miners?
I honestly think that the Miners probably have. I've not taken a good look at the teams in the NRC, but as far as the ARC, I think you got to put them up there as probably one of the top 5 or top 3, if not the number 1 team in the ARC with the best linebacking core.
Okay. So I love this scene. I love seeing my boy. So for those of you that don't know, TJ Metcalf in the chat here, after being on the show, just drops in and says, yeah, I got some reloads to spend as well. So we got a 74 overall star development coming in as a rookie, dropping bombs on Miners Live, saying he's going to have 8.5 sacks in his rookie campaign. Oh, and by the way, yeah, I got some reloads to spend too. So I'm really looking forward. Rohan, you bring up the linebacking core. I'm looking forward to the defensive line. When you talk about TJ Metcalf now and there, you talk about Dominic Moore, you talk about Antonio Griggs. Like, I'm loving that defensive line. Third down, what do we got?
All right, so 3 of your most valuable players, arguably, on the team, Damani Manuel, Buck Ulbrich, and D-Mac. I can't fully pronounce his name. How do you pronounce his last name or whatever?
Dariantre Machiavelli.
All right, let's just go with D-Mac.
We call him D-Mac.
All right, so they're going to be playing this upcoming season with the minors, but after that, they'll be free agents. So this is the final year of the contracts for the 3 most valuable players on the minors. What's the biggest priority out of these 3? Who's the top priority to keep for this team? You probably, in the best case, you want to keep all of them since they're so good and so valuable. But let's just say you don't have the money to do it. Who's the top priority to keep on this team?
2 words: Damani Manuel. Damani Manuel is my number 1 priority on the entire team. He's been my number 1 priority as I've looked towards future free agent years for anybody. Yeah, I'm going to have to manipulate. I'm going to have to manipulate the roster and manipulate the cap space a bit with Damani Manuel and Buck Ulbrich and Dariantre Machiavelli all becoming free agents. There is a chance. Look, Miners fans, I don't want to get your hopes up here. There is a chance that one of those players is wearing a different uniform next season. Not this coming season, the season after that. This might be the final season for one of those players as a member of the Sacramento Miners franchise. I don't know who it is. I'm certainly going to do absolutely everything I can to bring back Damani Manuel. I didn't bring in Jacari Torres to replace Damani Manuel. I brought in Jacari Torres to complement Damani Manuel. I brought in Pavel Frederick because I knew that I might be losing Buck Ulbrich or Dariantre Machiavelli. And if I do lose them, then Pavel Frederick in his second year in the league will be in a better position to replace one of those guys. Not saying he's going to be that good in his second year in the league, but he's going to be in a much better position to do so. So I wanted to get a wide receiver this year so that he could develop a little bit for a full season if he's going to then possibly have to take over for one of those guys. If I had to put him in order, I don't know if I could decide between Buck Ulbrich and Dariantre Machiavelli. I really do love what Buck Ulbrich does in terms of his size. I think if you see what he did last season and some of those jump balls, some of those balls that Chumlee threw in the back of the end zone, Buck Ulbrich just has that ability to go up and get it. I don't know if there's anybody in the league on defense that is going to go up and get a ball away from him. If he goes up and gets it, he either catches it or he drops it. It's not getting swatted away. So it's going to be really hard for me to not try and re-sign Buck Ulbrich. But again, it might come down to who's asking for more money, who's asking for more years. I don't know, and I won't really know until the season starts. So again, tough question, great question. Damani Manuel is my number 1 priority.
All right.
4th down, what do we got?
4th down. So this is not, too tough on you. This isn't 4th and 10 or 4th and long. This is just 4th and inches.
It's a gimme,
We're just going to take a simple running play to get this first down. Who's the biggest steal of the draft for the Miners? I mean, you got TJ Metcalf in the first round. You just spoke with TJ, and you were surprised yourself that he slipped all the way to the number 17 to the Miners. Also, you got Oscar Ayers in the 7th round, who's 70 overall. In the 7th round, I mean, how often do you get that? So just who was the biggest steal in this draft for the Miners?
So actually, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something different here. I'm going to defer this one to you because I want to hear what you have to say, and then I'll give you mine. But I want to see what you have to say first because I think I have a different thought process than a lot of people when it comes to the biggest steal, or what I would say the biggest value. So why don't you tell me? You probably have a guy that you think was the biggest steal for the team this year. Who do you think it was?
Yeah, so I mentioned Oscar Ayers and TJ Metcalf because they're at the top of my list. You can also throw in Pavel Frederick there, but I wouldn't put him as my number 1 guy, the number 1 steal for the Miners. So I would honestly say Oscar Ayers. I mean, obviously there's no footage out there of him and no actual tape out there because he wasn't a user submitted player in the college series. So just looking at his attributes, he's a 70 overall in the 7th round. How do you get it's you have to be, I think that's a huge steal to get someone that's a 70 overall in the 7th round, in the last round of the draft. Usually you're looking at someone in the mid 60s, low 60s in the 7th round. I think, TJ Metcalf was probably the second biggest steal, but you knew he was a guaranteed first rounder no matter what. So I think just what fools my mind is just that you got a 70 overall in the 7th round. That's still, I can't wrap my head around that. And I think that's just a huge steal for the Miners. And I can't wait to see what he does.
Yeah, so I didn't think that you were going to go there. The reason why I teed it up to you first is because I figured you were probably going to say TJ Metcalf. But for me, I agree. The way that I look at when you pose the question, who's the biggest steal of the draft? For me, that I'm looking for biggest value. Which guy in the draft is going to give me the biggest value based on where they were taken? And so for me, it's almost a no-brainer, and it's Oscar Ayers. I mean, look, Oscar Ayers enters, like you said, he's a 70 overall. All we had on him, all I had to go off of was the combine grades. Whatever his combine scores were, that's what I had. He was not in the college series. We had no tape on him whatsoever. He wasn't user submitted, wasn't a generic, was not even in the college series. All I had was the combine grades on him. But when I looked at the combine grades, things jumped out at me. The first thing that jumped out at me was his size, right? So when you look at Oscar Ayers, 6'4", 304 pounds. He entered as a defensive end. He's not going to play defensive end for the Sacramento Miners. He's 6'4", 304 pounds. He's going to play defensive tackle. I'm going to move Oscar Ayers to defensive tackle. And then when I moved Oscar Ayers to defensive tackle, he ran a 4.75 40. If you take the 4.75 40 time and you line it up with all of the defensive tackles, he would have been the fastest defensive tackle at the combine. Faster than Jermaine Taylor, way faster than Jermaine Taylor. Jermaine Taylor ran a 4.97. Oscar Ayers ran a 4.75. Jermaine Taylor had a 7.25 in the 3-cone, right? Phenomenal. Jermaine Taylor had a 7.25 in the 3-cone.
So are you putting Jermaine Taylor and Oscar Ayers in the same conversation?
So yes, I'm putting them in the same conversation, but only in the sense that what I was looking at and all I had to look at was the combine scores. Now, granted, the overalls and the attributes, the draft card played out differently. Jermaine Taylor, we can look at, and maybe that's something that we can do. And I'll put that up on the Twitter page, is I'll do a side-by-side comparison of Oscar Ayers' attributes versus Jermaine Taylor's attributes. But in the 3-cone, Jermaine Taylor ran a 7.25. Oscar Ayers ran a 7.27. They basically did the same exact thing in the 3-cone. Oscar Ayers was significantly faster in the 40. And then if you go to the shuttle, Jermaine Taylor ran a 4.71 in the shuttle. Oscar Ayers ran a 4.72 in the shuttle. So Oscar Ayers had a faster 40 time. He had basically the same 3-cone, basically the same shuttle. And then the only area where Jermaine Taylor really got him was in strength, right? In the bench press. And
all right, so then I'll ask you this. If you're putting Jermaine Taylor and Oscar Ayers in the same conversation and you're comparing the stats in the combine, do you think the only reason that Oscar Ayers is a 7th rounder was because the fact that he didn't play in the college series and there's no foot tape on him?
Yes, 100%. Okay. Look, if Oscar Ayers was in the college series and there was tape on him throughout the season, we would have heard his name week after week. If he's entering the RFL as a rookie and he's 70 overall and he's 304 pounds running a 4.75 faster than any other defensive tackle, and he's going to be playing defensive tackle, he's not going to play defensive end. If he was playing defensive end, he would have been the 3rd or 4th biggest defensive end in the class. And I don't want my defensive ends weighing 304 pounds. I just don't. And yes, I do realize that the Jermaine Taylor comp is a little bit ridiculous, but if Oscar Ayers was a user submitted who had reloads to spend and develop and grow his player, and he was in the college series and he had star dev instead of normal dev, Oscar Ayers could be an 80 overall by the end of this season. I'm telling you right now, in 4-3 sets, if and when we run a 4-3, I don't know how often that's going to be, Oscar Ayers will be that number 2 defensive tackle. I think he's that guy. I really do. I know I'm hyping him up a lot here, but Oscar Ayers, without question, was my biggest steal in this draft. I did not expect to go on this long rant, long tangent. I know we've run over time a little bit. We'll get out of here in a couple of minutes, but anything else that you want to add? I mean, I think we both agree on Oscar Ayers. TJ Metcalf, certainly. I didn't expect to get him at 17, but any final words, anything before we get out of here, Rohan?
Well, I guess just all the questions had centered on just how this Miners team and what is going to look, and there's what to expect. And I think for those Miner fans out there watching, I think you should be really excited what's to come for this team, especially with how Coach Dunn here did in this draft. I think you did really well, Coach. I think Miners fans, there's something to look out for this team, man. Don't be surprised if we crown them in June, Relo Bowl champs next June. So I'm just saying. I mean, there's some good stuff to look out for.
Yeah, certainly. Just before we get out of here, here is that draft card. I know you've probably seen it a few times by now. Overall grade of an A, number 4 draft rank in the entire RFL. Certainly excited about this draft class. There you see it right there. Defensive end, Oscar Ayers, 70 overall in the 7th round. Rohan, the producer, thanks for coming on for 4 Down Territory. I look forward to it again next week. Thanks again, buddy.
You got it, man.
All right. So a couple minutes before we get out of here, if you missed any part of the show, you can check out the archive on YouTube, Sacramento Miners RFL. Please hit that subscribe button. We're really building that subscription base. Really liking what I've seen so far. I think we've jumped to about 25 subscribers already in the first couple weeks of the show. So really excited there. Thank you guys very much for that. The more subscribers we get, the more content, exclusive content maybe we'll be able to do and provide some more stuff for you guys that way. If you have any ideas on some content, please feel free to reach out. At Miners RFL on Twitter, at Miners RFL on Instagram. Special thank you again to TJ Metcalf, 17th overall pick out of the University of Miami, for coming on the show. Great talking to him today. Until next time, guys, be sure to check out the RFL, relocationfootballleague.com. If you're in the Discord, be sure to check out the community channel, the RFL chat, RFL news, lots of great stuff. And just think, we are about 3 weeks away from the college series kicking off. So really excited for that. Until next week, thanks, Rohan, the producer. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in at home. And we'll see you next week on another episode of Miners Live. Take care, everybody.